When my daughter got married, I hid the fact that I inherited $15 million from her grandfather. Thank God I did not say anything because right in the middle of the wedding reception, her husband showed up with a notary and a contract that would steal my life. He thought he was robbing a senile old mechanic. He did not know he was declaring war on a multimillionaire who had been preparing for this moment for 10 years. I am Bernie, 68 years old, and until last Saturday, I thought the worst pain a father could feel was walking his only daughter down the aisle to marry a man he did not trust. I was wrong. The worst pain is realizing your daughter is standing by and watching while that man tries to destroy you. If you are watching this, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you are listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far my warning travels. The wedding reception was held at the Grand Hotel downtown, a venue that cost at least $30,000 for the evening. I sat at the main family table nursing a glass of water and doing the math in my head. My new son-in-law Travis was a real estate agent who had not sold a house in 6 months. My daughter Lily was a substitute teacher. They were celebrating champagne taste on a tap water budget, and I knew exactly who they expected to pay the bill eventually. Me. I adjusted my tie, which felt like a noose. I was wearing a suit I bought at a discount outlet 5 years ago. To everyone in this room, I was just Bernie, the retired mechanic who lived in a rundown wooden house on the edge of town. They looked at my calloused hands and my scuffed shoes, and they saw a man who had nothing. They did not know about the bank account in the Cayman Islands. They did not know about the patent my father sold in 1995. They did not know that the old wooden house sat on top of a natural gas deposit worth $4 million. I kept my mouth shut. My father had put a clause in his will. I had to live humbly for 10 years before I could touch the money. That 10-year period ended exactly 1 week ago. I was going to tell Lily tonight. I was going to give them a check for $100,000 as a wedding gift to help them start their lives debt-free. But then the music stopped. Travis stood up at the head table. He was wearing a tuxedo that cost more than my truck. He tapped his spoon against his champagne glass, and the sharp, ringing sound cut through the room. 200 guests fell silent, turning their eyes to the groom. He flashed that bright white smile, the one he used to charm old ladies into selling their homes for half their value. Family and friends, thank you for sharing this magical night with us. Travis began, his voice smooth as oil. Today, Lily and I begin our journey together. But we are not just thinking about ourselves. We are thinking about family. Specifically, we are thinking about the man who made this all possible. My father-in-law, Bernie. A spotlight hit me. I blinked, blinded by the sudden glare. The guests applauded politely. I forced a weak smile, waiting for him to thank me for raising Lily. I expected a toast. I expected a sentimental speech. I did not expect an eviction notice. Travis continued, his voice dropping to a register of fake concern. We all know Bernie has been living alone in that big old house since Lily's mother passed. It is too much work for a man his age. It is lonely. And frankly, it is dangerous. Lily and I have spent many sleepless nights worrying about him. I frowned. Dangerous. I was 68, not 90. I still chopped my own firewood. I fixed my own roof. I ran 3 miles every morning. What was he talking about? So Travis announced, raising his glass higher, we have decided to give Bernie the greatest gift we could give. We are moving him into our new apartment complex where he can be safe and cared for. And in exchange, he is graciously allowing us to move into the family home to renovate it and use it as the foundation for our future business. Ladies and gentlemen, please raise your glasses to Bernie and his incredible generosity in signing over his property to the next generation. The room erupted in applause. People were cheering. Someone shouted, "What a wonderful son-in-law!" I sat there frozen. My blood ran cold. He was not asking me. He was telling me. He was announcing to 200 witnesses that I was giving him my house. A house he thought was worth $300,000, but was actually a gold mine. He was publicly shaming me into submission. I looked at Lily. She was sitting next to him, looking down at her lap, playing with her napkin. She knew. My little girl knew about this ambush, and she had said nothing. I started to stand up to object, to say that I never agreed to this. But Travis was faster. He waved his hand toward the side of the room. And to make it official tonight, so we can start our honeymoon with peace of mind, we have a special guest. Everyone, please welcome Paula, our family notary. From the shadows, a woman stepped forward. She was wearing a severe gray suit and carrying a thick leather folder. She did not look like a wedding guest. She looked like an executioner. The applause died down, replaced by a murmuring curiosity. This was highly irregular. Who brings a notary to a wedding reception? Travis stepped down from the stage and walked toward my table. Paula followed him closely, like a shark trailing a ship. The spotlight followed them. Every eye in the room was fixed on me. The pressure was physical, heavy, and suffocating. Travis reached my table and placed a hand on my shoulder. His grip was tight, painful. It was not a hug. It was a restraint. "Pop," he said loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Paula has the papers right here. It is a simple power of attorney and a transfer of deed. Just a formality, really. We want to take the burden of home ownership off your shoulders. You deserve to relax." Paula opened the folder on the white tablecloth, pushing aside the crystal wine glasses. She laid out a document that was thick with legal jargon. She clicked a heavy, expensive pen and held it out to me. "Sign here, Mr. Kowalski," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "And initial here and here." I looked at the paper. It was a full, durable power of attorney. If I signed this, Travis would have control over everything. My house, my truck, my bank accounts, my medical decisions. He could legally put me in a nursing home and sell everything I owned. I looked up at Travis. His smile was gone. His eyes were hard and cold. "Travis, this is not the time or the place," I said, keeping my voice low. "We can talk about this next week." Travis let out a loud laugh, a sound that was meant to sound jovial, but carried a sharp edge of menace. "Oh, Bernie, always the procrastinator. Why wait? The guests are here. The witnesses are here. Let us celebrate your retirement from responsibility. Come on, Pop, do it for Lily. Do it so she does not have to worry about you dying alone in that old shack." A woman at the next table, a cousin of Travis, leaned over. "Go ahead, Bernie, sign it. They are such good kids taking care of you like that." "You are lucky." Another voice chimed in. "Don't be stubborn, Bernie. It is for the best." The peer pressure was a wave crashing over me. They all thought I was a senile old man who needed saving. They did not see the predator standing over me. Travis pressed the pen into my hand. His fingers squeezed mine, forcing my hand toward the paper. "Just sign it, Bernie," he hissed under his breath, so only I could hear. "Don't embarrass your daughter on her wedding day. Do not be the selfish old man everyone thinks you are." I looked at the pen. It was heavy gold-plated, probably bought with a credit card that was already maxed out. I looked at the document. It was a death warrant for my freedom. Then I looked at Lily again. "Lily," I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs. "Honey, is this what you want? Do you want to kick your father out of his own home?" Lily finally looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She looked terrified. She looked at Travis, then at me, then back at Travis. "Daddy, please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Travis says it is the only way. We have debts, Daddy. We need the equity. The house is just sitting there. You do not need all that space. Please, just sign it. If you love me, you will sign it." My heart shattered. It wasn't just Travis. My daughter, who I had protected and provided for her entire life, was trading my dignity for a quick payout. She was willing to make me homeless to pay off her husband's bad investments. I looked down at the paper again. The ink seemed to swim before my eyes. I thought about the $15 million in the trust fund. I thought about the check I had in my jacket pocket, the gift that would have solved all their problems. But they did not want a gift. They wanted a robbery. I gripped the pen tighter. Travis relaxed his hand on my shoulder, thinking he had won. He started to turn to the crowd, ready to announce his victory. That is when I made my move. I did not sign. Instead, I stood up slowly. I took the heavy gold pen and I threw it. I hurled it with all the force of a man who had worked manual labor for 40 years. It flew across the table and struck a full glass of red wine. The glass shattered. Red wine exploded outward like a gunshot wound, splashing across the pristine white tablecloth and spraying onto Lily's wedding dress. The gasps from the crowd were instant and horrified. The silence that followed was absolute. Lily looked down at the red stain spreading across her white silk bodice and began to sob. "I am not signing anything," I said, my voice steady and loud, ringing through the silent ballroom. "Not today, not tomorrow, not ever." Travis's face turned a deep shade of purple. The mask of the loving son-in-law vanished completely. He leaned in close, his face inches from mine. He smelled of expensive cologne and desperation. "You stupid old fool," he whispered, his voice shaking with rage. "You have no idea what you just did. That house is mine. I have already leveraged it. If you do not sign, I am ruined." "That is not my problem, Travis," I replied, turning to leave. Travis grabbed my arm. His fingernails dug into my suit jacket. "Listen to me, old man," he hissed. "If you walk out of here without signing that paper, you will never see your grandchild. Lily is pregnant. Did you know that? You will never hold that baby. You will die alone in that rotted house and no one will find you for weeks. Sign the paper or say goodbye to your family." I froze. A grandchild. They were using an unborn child as a hostage. I looked at Lily, expecting her to defend me, expecting her to tell him to stop. But she just cried, wiping at the wine stain on her dress. She did not look at me. I pulled my arm free from Travis's grip with a violent jerk. He stumbled back, surprised by my strength. "You are right, Travis," I said, coldness settling in my chest. "I will not see my grandchild if he is raised by a man like you. But remember this moment. Remember the moment you threatened me, because you just made the most expensive mistake of your life." I turned my back on them. I walked through the silent crowd of stunned guests. I could feel their eyes on me, judging me, thinking I was a monster for ruining the wedding. I did not care. I walked out of the ballroom and into the cool night air. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so deep it felt like magma. I walked to my old Ford pickup truck, the one Travis made fun of. I sat in the driver's seat and took a deep breath. I reached into my inner jacket pocket and pulled out the check for $100,000 I had written earlier that day. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I tore it in half. Then in half again. I tossed the confetti of paper onto the floor mat. I started the engine. I needed to get home. I needed to call my lawyer, Mr. Blackwood. I needed to secure my assets because I knew this was not over. Travis was desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. But when I pulled into my driveway 20 minutes later, my headlights caught something shiny on the front door. I stopped the truck and squinted. It was a new padlock. A heavy industrial hasp had been screwed directly into the beautiful oak wood of my front door. My key would not work. I got out of the truck and ran to the door. I tried the handle. Locked. I went to the window. Locked. Then a voice crackled from the digital doorbell camera I had installed last year for security. "Go sleep it off," Bernie Travis's voice sneered through the tiny speaker. "You were drunk at the wedding. You caused a scene. For your own safety, we have secured the property until you are mentally stable enough to talk." I stared at the camera. He had locked me out of my own home while I was at his wedding. "We will let you in when you are ready to sign," the voice continued. "Until then, enjoy sleeping in your truck. Oh, and do not bother calling the police. I have the medical certificate right here. It says you are suffering from early onset dementia and are a danger to yourself. The police will just hand you back to my custody. Good night, Pop." The light on the camera turned off. I stood there in the dark on my own porch, shivering in the night air. I looked at the house my father built, the house I had raised my daughter in. They thought they had won. They thought they had trapped a helpless old man. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I dialed a number I had not called in 10 years. "Blackwood Law Firm," a voice answered on the second ring despite the late hour. "This is Bernard Kowalski," I said, my voice calm and deadly. "Initiate Protocol 0. They took the bait. I hung up the phone and looked back at the camera. Travis wanted a war. He was about to find out that he just brought a knife to a nuclear explosion. Part 2. I spent that night sleeping in the cab of my 1995 Ford pickup truck parked 2 blocks away from my own house. My back ached and the cold seeped into my bones, but my mind was sharper than it had been in decades. I watched the sun come up over the trees, illuminating the roof of the house I was legally barred from entering. I drank stale coffee from a thermos I kept under the seat and waited. At 8 in the morning, a police cruiser rolled down the street. I sat up, finally. I thought the neighbors had called them, or maybe Travis had called them to have me hauled away. I started the truck and drove up to the house, pulling in right behind the police car. 2 officers stepped out. One was young, a rookie. The other was older Sergeant Miller, a man I had known for 20 years. We used to fish together. "Sergeant," I called out, stepping out of the truck. "Thank God you are here. My son-in-law has changed the locks on my house. I cannot get in." Sergeant Miller looked at me. He did not smile. He did not wave. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and caution. "Bernie," he said, keeping his hand near his belt. "We received a call about a disturbance. We were told you might be trying to break into the property." "Break in," I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Miller, it is my house. The deed is in my name. You know this. You were at my backyard barbecue last 4th of July. Miller shifted his weight uncomfortably. "That is the thing, Bernie. We spoke to Travis and your daughter. They showed us some paperwork." "What paperwork?" I demanded, stepping closer. The rookie officer stepped forward, putting a hand on my chest to stop me. "Step back, sir." Just then, the front door opened. Travis walked out wearing a silk robe and holding a steaming mug of coffee. My coffee. From my kitchen. He looked at the officers with a practiced look of concern. "Officers, thank you for coming so quickly," he said. "Dad is having one of his episodes again. He gets confused about who lives where." "You liar!" I shouted, lunging forward. The rookie grabbed my arm and twisted it behind my back. "Calm down, sir, or I will have to cuff you," the rookie barked. Travis sighed, shaking his head theatrically. "See what I mean? He is aggressive. Dr. Robinson warned us this might happen. Here is the medical certificate." Travis pulled a folded paper from his robe pocket and handed it to Sergeant Miller. Miller read it, his brow furrowing. "Bernie, this is signed by Dr. Robinson. It says you have been diagnosed with advanced dementia and are prone to violent outbursts. It grants temporary guardianship to your next of kin pending a court hearing. Dr. Robinson." I spat. That man is a quack. I have not seen a doctor in 2 years. I have never met a Dr. Robinson in my life. "He forgets things," Travis said sadly, tapping his temple. "That is part of the disease. He forgets doctor's appointments. He forgets signing papers." He looked at me with a smirk that only I could see. Miller looked at me, then at the paper, then at Travis. "Bernie," Miller said, his voice soft. "If this medical order is valid, I cannot let you in. It is a civil matter now. Actually, it is a medical matter. Technically, you are under their supervision. So you are going to let him steal my house, I asked, my voice trembling with rage. I am not stealing anything, Dad, Travis said. We are protecting you. Now why don't you come inside? We have a room set up for you. We can lock the door from the outside so you do not wander off and hurt yourself. He was inviting me into a prison. If I went inside that house, I would never come out. They would sedate me, strip me of my phone, and I would disappear. I looked at Miller. Is this how it ends, Sergeant? You are going to take the word of a man who has lived here for 20 minutes over a man you have known for 20 years. My hands are tied, Bernie Miller said, looking at the ground. You need to leave the property or go inside with your guardians. You cannot stay in the driveway causing a scene. I looked at Travis. He took a sip of coffee, his eyes dancing with victory. I will leave, I said. Travis looked disappointed. He wanted me inside. He wanted me under control. Where are you going, Dad? He asked, his voice sharpening. You have no money. Your cards are flagged. You have nowhere to go. I got back into my truck and slammed the door. I rolled down the window. I am going to get breakfast, I said. I backed out of the driveway, leaving my home behind. I drove straight to the Motel 6 on the highway. It was a dump, but it was cash only, and they didn't ask questions. I paid for a week with the emergency cash I kept in the truck's glove box. Once I was in the room, I sat on the lumpy mattress and pulled out my phone. I had 3 missed calls from Lily. I listened to the voicemail. Daddy, please stop making this hard. She was crying in the message. Travis is only trying to help. We saw you sleeping in the truck. It is embarrassing. Everyone is talking about it. Just come home and sign the papers. We can be a family again. She was worried about embarrassment, not about the fact that her husband had forged a medical document. I deleted the message. Then I called Blackwood. It is done, I said. They played the dementia card. They have a dirty doctor. I know Blackwood's voice was like gravel, deep and reassuring. I have already looked into Dr. Robinson. He has 3 malpractice suits pending and a gambling debt in Atlantic City. He sells prescriptions to college kids. Breaking him will be easy. How long, I asked. Give me 48 hours, Blackwood said. But Bernie, you need to lay low. Travis thinks he has won. Let him feel comfortable. He needs to make the next move. He needs to try to sell. He cannot sell without my signature, I said. Even with the guardianship, he needs a judge to sign off on a property sale. He will try to leverage it, Blackwood corrected. He does not want to sell the house. He wants to borrow against it. My sources tell me he is in deep with some loan sharks. He needs $2 million by Friday or he loses his knees. $2 million, I whistled. That house is only appraised at $300,000. That is the public appraisal, Blackwood said. But Travis knows something, or he thinks he knows something. He has been bragging to his creditors that the land is worth 10 times that. He must have found the geological survey you hid in the attic. I closed my eyes. The gas deposit. I had hidden those surveys 30 years ago. Travis must have snooped through my old files when he was pretending to help me clean the attic last month. He thinks he is sitting on a gold mine, I said. He is, Blackwood replied. But he doesn't hold the shovel. You do. Here is the plan, Bernie. Let him run up the debt. Let him promise the house to the sharks. Let him sign the preliminary contracts using that fake power of attorney. When he tries to finalize the deal, we will walk in and drop the hammer. I hung up and lay back on the bed. For the next 2 days, I lived like a fugitive. I ate vending machine food. I watched bad TV. I received texts from Travis. Dad, we canceled your credit cards for your protection. Dad, we reported your truck as stolen just in case you try to drive it in your condition. He was tightening the noose. He wanted to starve me out. He wanted me to come crawling back, begging for food and shelter, so he could force the pen into my hand. On Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Blackwood. It is time. He has a meeting set for tomorrow at 10 a.m. He is meeting the creditors at my office. Your office, I texted back, confused. Yes, Blackwood replied. He does not know it is my office. He thinks he is meeting a private equity firm called Archon Capital. It is a shell company I set up yesterday. I am the shark, Bernie, and tomorrow we are going to eat. I smiled for the first time in days. I spent the rest of the evening preparing. I shaved my beard. I took a long shower. Then I opened the small safe box I kept welded under the passenger seat of my truck. I pulled out a suit. Not the cheap polyester one I wore to the wedding. This was a bespoke Italian wool suit, charcoal gray, tailored to perfection in Milan 10 years ago. I pulled out a pair of handmade leather shoes. And finally I pulled out a watch, a Patek Philippe worth more than Travis's entire life. I had kept these things hidden, waiting for the day I could be myself again. I dressed slowly. The transformation was startling. In the mirror, the hunched, tired mechanic vanished. In his place stood Bernard Kowalski, the silent tycoon. I looked at my reflection. Tomorrow, Travis, I said to the empty room. Tomorrow, you meet the real me. End of part 2. The drive from the hotel to my house was a blur of red taillights and white fury. My hands gripped the steering wheel of my Ford so hard my knuckles turned the color of old bone. I kept replaying the scene in the ballroom. The wine staining the dress. The look on Lily's face. She had not looked at me with love. She had looked at me with calculation. That was the thing that hurt more than the betrayal itself. The realization that my little girl was gone, replaced by a stranger who viewed her father as a liquidation asset. When I finally turned onto my street, the familiar sight of my neighborhood should have calmed me. The oak trees I had planted 30 years ago cast long shadows across the lawns. The streetlights buzzed with a comforting hum. This was my sanctuary. This was the place where I had nursed my wife through her final days. This was the place where I sat on the porch and watched the seasons change. But as my headlights swept across my driveway, something was wrong. The motion sensor light above the garage did not flick on. It had been disabled. Darkness swallowed the front of the house. I parked the truck and stepped out into the chill of the night air. Silence hung heavy over the property. It was too quiet. I walked up the concrete path, my boots crunching on the gravel. I reached into my pocket for my keychain, the brass key warm from my body heat. I knew every scratch on that front door. I knew the way the hinges groaned if you didn't lift the handle just right. But when I reached for the lock, my hand hit cold steel. I froze. I pulled my phone out and shined the flashlight beam on the door. There, screwed directly into the vintage mahogany wood that my father had hand-carved, was a heavy-duty industrial hasp. A thick silver padlock, the kind used for storage units and shipping containers, clamped the door shut. The wood around the screws was splintered. They had done this in a hurry. They had drilled into the heart of my home without a second thought. I tried to shove the door. It was solid, unyielding. I stood there staring at the metal scar on my front door. A wave of dizziness hit me. This was not just a lock. This was a statement. This was an act of war. Then a circle of blue light flared to life next to the doorframe. The digital doorbell camera. I had installed it to catch package thieves. Now it was being used to keep the owner out. A static hiss cut through the silence, followed by a voice that dripped with condescension. "Go home, Bernie." It was Travis. He wasn't yelling. He sounded bored, like he was talking to a stray dog that had wandered onto his lawn. I leaned into the camera, my face illuminated by the blue glow. "Travis," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Open this door. Open it right now, or I will take a tire iron to it." There was a pause. I could hear the faint sound of music in the background. They were still at the wedding. He was doing this remotely from his phone, probably holding a glass of champagne in the other hand. "You are confused," Pop Travis said. his voice oozing fake sympathy. "You had too much to drink at the reception. You made a scene. We cannot let you in. You might hurt yourself. Or worse, you might damage the property." "Damage the property," I roared, slamming my hand against the siding. "You drilled a hole in my front door. You are the one damaging my property. We are securing the asset," Travis corrected, "and technically, it is not your property anymore." "Not really. I have the medical power of attorney signed by Dr. Robinson. It states clearly that in the event of a mental health crisis, I have full stewardship over your residence." Tonight was definitely a crisis, Bernie. Throwing things. Yelling. "You are unstable." I stared into the black lens of the camera. I realized then that this was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. They had the lock ready. They had the drills ready. While I was putting on my suit for their wedding, they were here defiling my home. "Travis, listen to me carefully," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You are breaking the law. This is an illegal eviction. Call the cops." Travis laughed, a dry sound that crackled over the speaker. "Go ahead. Tell them a senile old man is trying to break into a house that his legal guardian has secured. See whose side they take. I have the paperwork, Bernie. You have a temper tantrum. Now get off my porch before I trigger the silent alarm." The blue light on the camera swirled and then went dark. The connection was cut. I stood alone in the dark. The silence of the suburbs rushed back in, but it felt different now. It felt hostile. I looked at the window. The blinds were drawn tight. I walked around to the back. The kitchen door was also padlocked. Even the basement bulkhead was secured with a fresh chain. They had sealed it tight. My clothes were in there. My wife's photo albums. My medication. My food. Everything I owned was behind those walls, and I was standing on the outside with nothing but the suit on my back and the keys to a truck. I walked back to the truck, my legs feeling heavy, like they were moving through wet concrete. I sat in the driver's seat and looked at the house one last time. It looked like a tomb. For the first time in 68 years, I was homeless. I had millions of dollars sitting in accounts overseas, but right now I did not have a bed. I did not have a toothbrush. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel. A deep, guttural laugh bubbled up from my chest. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the sound of a man who had just realized the game had changed. Travis thought he had locked me out. He thought he had cut me off from my resources. He thought he was protecting his asset. But he didn't understand. He hadn't locked me out of the house. He had locked himself in a cage with a tiger, and he had just thrown away the key. I started the engine of the truck. The old diesel engine roared to life, a sound of raw power that shattered the quiet night. I wasn't going to break the door down. Not tonight. Tonight, I would let him think he won. I shifted the truck into gear and pulled away from the curb, leaving the dark, silent house in the rearview mirror. "You want to play dirty, Travis?" I whispered to the empty cab. "Fine. Let's get in the mud." The cab of my 1995 Ford F-150 was cold. Not the kind of cold you can just button your coat against, but a damp, seeping cold that settles into your joints and reminds you that you are 68 years old. I shifted in the driver's seat, trying to find a comfortable angle against the worn vinyl. My knees hit the steering wheel. My neck was already stiff. I pulled my suit jacket tighter around me, the expensive wool feeling out of place against the cracked dashboard. I stared out through the windshield at the empty parking lot of a 24-hour diner. A stray cat picked through a dumpster under a flickering halogen light. To anyone walking by, I looked like a tragedy. A homeless old man living out of his truck, forgotten by the world. A victim of a cruel son-in-law and an ungrateful daughter. But as I watched that cat, I started to chuckle. It started low in my chest and turned into a cough. If Travis could see me now, he would feel justified. He would think he had won. He would think he had successfully relegated me to the trash heap of society. He did not know that the man sleeping in this truck could buy this diner. In fact, I could buy this entire city block and turn it into a parking lot, just for this truck if I wanted to. I closed my eyes and let my mind drift back to the reason I was here. The reason I had lived like a pauper for a decade. It all started with my father, Arthur. Arthur was a genius, but he was a paranoid genius. He was a chemical engineer who spent 40 years in a basement lab that smelled like sulfur and burnt coffee. Everyone thought he was a tinkerer, a hoarder. They did not know that in 1998, he sold a patent for a biodegradable industrial solvent to a multinational conglomerate. The check was for $15 million. I remember the day he showed it to me. He did not look happy. He looked terrified. Bernie, he had told me, his hands shaking as he held the slip of paper. Money is like radiation. It changes things. It mutates people. If I give this to you now, it will ruin you. It will ruin Lily. You will forget how to work. You will forget who you are. When Arthur died 10 years ago, I thought I would inherit the money immediately. Lily was 16 then. I could have sent her to the best schools. I could have fixed up the house. But Arthur had one final experiment left. The reading of the will was private. Just me and a lawyer named Silas Blackwood. Blackwood had read the clause with a stoic face. To my son Bernard, I leave the entirety of my estate and the capital held in the Atlas Trust. However, access to these funds is conditional. Bernard must live for 10 years without accessing a single cent of the principal or interest. He must maintain his current standard of living. He must continue to work with his hands. He must not reveal the existence of this wealth to anyone, including his daughter, until the 10-year term is complete. If he fails, if he borrows against the future, if he reveals the secret, the money goes to the Red Cross, the decade of humility my father had called it. A test of character. I hated him for it at first. When my wife got sick, I wanted to use that money for specialists in Switzerland. But I couldn't. I had to rely on insurance and savings. When the roof leaked, I had to patch it myself. When Lily wanted a new car for college, I had to tell her we couldn't afford it. I watched her disappointment. I watched her grow resentful, thinking I was just a stingy old mechanic who didn't try hard enough. I watched her drift toward men like Travis, men who flashed fake wealth, men who promised her the easy life I seemingly refused to give her. It was torture. But I kept the promise. I lived the lie. I checked the digital clock on the dashboard. It was 3 a.m. Yesterday. The deadline had passed yesterday. The 10 years were up on the morning of Lily's wedding. I had officially survived the gauntlet. The money was mine. The interest alone over the last decade had probably added another 4 or 5 million to the pile. I was freer than I had ever been in my life. I had planned to tell them at the reception. I had planned to hand over that check for $100,000 as a starter, as a test to see if they could handle it. But Travis had interrupted the timeline. He had mistaken my humility for weakness. He looked at my silence and saw submission. He didn't realize that for 10 years, I had been training myself to hold back, to observe, to keep my cards hidden until the river card was dealt. He thought he had trapped a mouse. He had actually walked into a cage with a lion who had just been let off his chain. I sat up and rubbed my face. The stubble on my chin rasped against my palm. The irony was delicious. If Travis had waited 48 hours, if he had just treated me with basic human decency for 2 more days, I would have given them the world. I would have bought them a house. I would have set up trust funds for their children. But greed is impatient. Greed cannot wait. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my burner phone. It was the only phone Blackwood had the number for. I dialed. It rang once. Sir Blackwood's voice was crisp, alert. He never slept. "I am in the truck," I said, my voice rough from the cold. "I assumed as much," Blackwood replied. "The monitoring service shows they installed the locks at 7 p.m. They moved fast. Faster than I expected, I admitted. But it plays into our hands. It does." Blackwood agreed. I have the files ready. I have the deed to the house. I have the geological surveys proving the gas deposits. And I have the dossier on Travis's debts. He owes $2.1 million to a syndicate in Chicago. They are not nice people, Bernie. He promised them your property as collateral. He told them he would have the power of attorney signed by midnight tonight. He failed, I said, looking at my own hands in the moonlight. He did, Blackwood said. And now he is going to panic. A desperate man makes mistakes. He already made the biggest mistake of his life, I said. He made it personal. I want to initiate the next phase, Blackwood. Are you sure? Blackwood asked. Once we start this, the legal fees alone will bankrupt him. He will lose his license. He might end up in prison for fraud. Lily will be collateral damage. I looked out at the dark parking lot. I thought about Lily standing there in her white dress, stained with wine, crying not for me, but for the house she wanted to steal. She needed to learn. My father taught me the hard way. Now I had to teach her. Do it, I said. Release the hounds. Very well, Blackwood said. I will see you at the safe house in an hour. Get some coffee, Bernie. You have a busy day ahead of you. I hung up the phone. I started the engine of the Ford. The heater sputtered to life, blowing warm air onto my frozen fingers. I wasn't just a mechanic anymore. I wasn't just a father. I was the executor of my own will. And Travis was about to find out that inheritance taxes can be deadly. I spent the rest of the night watching my own house from down the street like a criminal casing a bank. At 8 a.m. sharp, I saw the curtains twitch. They were awake. They were in my kitchen, probably drinking my coffee and planning how to spend my money. I started the engine of the Ford and drove to the precinct. I did not want to call 911. I wanted to look a man in the eye. I returned to the house 30 minutes later with a squad car following close behind. Sergeant Miller was behind the wheel. We had fished together for 20 years. I thought that counted for something. I thought history mattered. I stepped out of my truck and pointed at the padlock on my front door. Look at that Miller, I said, my voice raspy from lack of sleep. Illegal eviction, breaking and entering. I want them out of my house. Miller adjusted his belt and walked up the driveway. He looked uncomfortable. He knocked on the door frame right next to the hasp they had drilled into the wood. The door opened instantly. Travis stood there. He was wearing my bathrobe. The sight of him in my clothes drinking from my favorite ceramic mug made my vision blur with rage. "Officers, thank God you are here," Travis said, his voice dripping with relief. He stepped out onto the porch, acting like he owned the place. We were terrified he might come back and hurt himself. "Cut the act, Travis," I snapped, stepping forward. "Miller, arrest him." Miller held up a hand to stop me. "Bernie, settle down. Let him speak." Travis sighed, shaking his head with a look of profound sadness. "See what I mean, officer? He is aggressive. He is confused. He thinks this is still his house. It is my house," I roared. Travis reached into the pocket of my robe and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to Miller with the reverence of a priest handling a holy text. "This is the medical certification from Dr. Robinson," Travis said softly. "It confirms the diagnosis. Early onset dementia with paranoid delusions. We have temporary medical guardianship until the court date next week. We changed the locks for his own safety. He wanders, officer. He leaves the stove on. We are just trying to protect him." Miller read the paper. I watched his face change. The respect he usually held for me evaporated, replaced by pity. He looked at me not as a man, but as a patient. A problem to be managed. Bernie, Miller said slowly, handing the paper back to Travis. "Is this true? Have you been seeing Dr. Robinson?" "I have never met a Dr. Robinson in my life," I said, my voice trembling. "It is a forgery, Miller. Can't you see that? He is stealing my life." Miller looked at Travis, then at the house, then back at me. He took a deep breath. Bernie, this document looks legal. It has a doctor's signature. It has a notary stamp. If they have medical guardianship, this isn't a criminal matter anymore. It is a civil dispute. Civil. I laughed, a harsh barking sound. He drilled a lock into my door. He is wearing my clothes. That is theft. It is a domestic issue, Miller insisted, stepping back toward his cruiser. I cannot kick them out if they are your legal guardians. And honestly, Bernie, if you are sick, maybe you should go inside with them. They seem to care about you. Care about me. I pointed a shaking finger at Travis. He wants me dead. Travis looked at Miller with wide, innocent eyes. We just want him safe, officer. We have a room prepared. We can take care of him. I looked at the open door behind Travis. It looked like the mouth of a shark. If I went in there, I would never come out. They would sedate me. They would isolate me. I would be a prisoner in the home I built. I am not going inside, I said, stepping back toward my truck. Miller looked relieved. That is your choice, Bernie, but you cannot stay here causing a disturbance. You need to leave the premises. So I am the intruder now, I asked. Technically, yes, Miller said. Go get some rest, Bernie. Sort this out in court. Travis smirked. It was a small, quick twitch of his lips that Miller didn't see, but I did. He had won the battle. He had the badge on his side. Where will you go, Dad? Travis asked, his voice mocking me. You have no cash. Your cards are frozen. Do not be stubborn. Come inside and eat some breakfast. I opened the door of my truck. I looked at Travis one last time. I memorized the arrogance on his face. I wanted to remember exactly how he looked in this moment of triumph, so I could savor the moment I wiped that look off his face forever. I am going to get some coffee, I said. I climbed into the truck and slammed the door. I watched in the rearview mirror as Miller got back into his cruiser, and Travis waved a friendly goodbye. They thought I was defeated. They thought I was driving away to curl up and die. I put the truck in gear. I wasn't leaving. I was regrouping. And Dr. Robinson was about to have a very bad day. I left the motel with a hollow feeling in my stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. It was the gnawing sensation of being a ghost in my own life. I had slept for 4 hours on a mattress that smelled like stale cigarette smoke and regret. My back was stiff and my mouth tasted like iron. I needed coffee. I needed food. And most importantly, I needed access to my resources. I pulled my truck into the gas station on the corner of 4th and Main. I grabbed a black coffee and a wrapped breakfast sandwich from the heater rack. It was pathetic food, but it was fuel. I walked to the counter and pulled out my debit card. It was the card connected to my pension account, the one I used for groceries and gas. There was maybe $3,000 in there. Enough to survive a week in a motel while I waited for Blackwood to drop the hammer. I swiped the card. Declined. I frowned. I wiped the magnetic strip on my pant leg and swiped again. Declined. Contact issuer. The cashier, a teenager with a nose ring and a look of absolute boredom, sighed. Do you have another card, sir? Or cash? I patted my pockets. I had used my emergency cash for the motel room. I had exactly $4.50 in loose change in the truck's ashtray. I am sorry, I mumbled. I must have forgotten to transfer funds. I left the sandwich on the counter. I walked out with just the coffee, paying with quarters I dug out of my pocket. The shame burned my face hotter than the steam rising from the cup. I was Bernard Kowalski. I had $15 million sitting in a trust fund that was technically mine as of 48 hours ago, and I could not afford a $3 sandwich. I drove straight to the bank. It was the local branch I had been using since 1985. They knew me here. The tellers gave my daughter lollipops when she was a toddler. They knew I paid my bills on time. They knew I was a man of my word. I walked through the glass doors expecting a friendly wave. Instead, the security guard, a man I had exchanged pleasantries with for a decade, stepped into my path. He did not block me physically, but his posture was tense. He was watching me. I walked up to the teller window. A young woman named Sarah was there. She usually asked about my garden. Today she looked down at her keyboard, typing furiously as I approached. "Good morning, Sarah," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "I seem to be having trouble with my card. I need to make a withdrawal. Just $500 for now." Sarah did not look up. Her face was pale. "One moment, Mr. Kowalski," she whispered. "I need to get the manager." She hurried away, leaving the window empty. I stood there, feeling the eyes of the other customers on my back. I looked at the reflection in the safety glass. I looked like a vagrant. My suit was wrinkled from sleeping in the truck. My eyes were bloodshot. I had not shaved in 2 days. I looked exactly like what Travis said I was, a confused, unstable old man. The door to the back office opened and Mr. Polson, the branch manager, walked out. He was a small man who always wore bow ties. I had fixed his wife's station wagon last winter for free. "Mr. Polson," I said, relief washing over me. "Thank God. There is a glitch with my card." Bernie Polson said, his voice low and professional. "Can you step into my office, please?" I followed him. He did not offer me a seat. He stood behind his desk, creating a barrier between us. "Bernie, we received a notification this morning regarding your accounts," Polson said, refusing to meet my eyes. "Your son-in-law Travis filed a report." "Travis does not have authority over my accounts," I snapped. "He presented a durable power of attorney and a medical certificate," Polson said. "He reported your cards as lost or stolen. He said you were wandering the city confused and spending money erratically due to a medical episode. He requested that we freeze all outgoing transactions to protect your assets from fraud." "Fraud," I laughed a bitter sound. "He is the fraud. It is my money, Polson. You know me. Do I look senile to you?" Polson looked at me. He took in my wrinkled clothes, my shaking hands, my desperation. "Bernie, I am not a doctor," he said softly. "I am a banker. I have to follow the protocol. When a legal guardian flags an account for suspicious activity, we have to lock it down. It is for your own protection." Protection. I slammed my hand on the desk. "You are starving me, are starving. I cannot buy food. I cannot put gas in my truck. You are helping him kill me." Polson flinched. "Please calm down, Bernie. If you continue to be aggressive, I will have to call security. Travis has already requested that new cards be issued and mailed to his address. He said he would handle your expenses from now on." I stared at him. Travis had thought of everything. He hadn't just locked the house. He had cut the supply lines. He was going to control every penny I spent. If I wanted a sandwich, I would have to ask him. If I wanted a tank of gas, I would have to beg. He was turning me into a child. I took a deep breath, forcing my heart rate to slow down. Getting angry would only prove their point. If I yelled, if I threw a chair, I would just be the violent dementia patient Dr. Robinson described. "Fine," I said, my voice icy. "You are just doing your job, Polson. But listen to me. Mark the time and date of this conversation. Because when I come back here with my lawyer and a court order proving that document is a forgery, you are going to wish you had looked me in the eye and trusted your gut instead of a piece of paper." I turned and walked out. I walked past the security guard. I walked past Sarah, who was pretending to count ones. I walked out into the bright morning sun. I checked my wallet. It was empty. I checked my pockets. Nothing. I was completely, entirely broke. I sat in my truck and stared at the fuel gauge. I had a quarter of a tank left. Enough to get to Blackwood's office, but not enough to get back. I was trapped. My stomach growled, a painful reminder of my biological reality. I had millions in potential energy, but zero kinetic cash. I needed to make a move. I needed to stop reacting and start attacking. But first, I had to survive the day. I reached for my phone to call Blackwood again, but it buzzed in my hand before I could dial. The screen lit up with a photo I had taken years ago. It was Lily smiling at her college graduation, wearing the cap and gown I had paid for with overtime shifts. My thumb hovered over the decline button. I knew what this call was going to be. It was going to be the guilt trip. It was going to be the emotional blackmail. But I needed to hear it. I needed to hear her voice so I could kill the last remaining part of me that still wanted to save her. I needed to know exactly which side she had chosen. I swiped right. "Hello, Lily," I said. "Daddy," her voice was high-tight, panicked. "Why are you doing this? Why are you embarrassing us at the bank?" "Travis just called me. He said you threatened Mr. Polson." "I didn't threaten him," I said, staring at the bank logo. "I promised him justice. There is a difference." "Daddy, stop it," she sobbed. "You are sick. You need help. We just want to take care of you. Why do you have to be so difficult?" I closed my eyes. There it was, the narrative. She had swallowed it whole. "I am not difficult, Lily," I said quietly. "I am awake. And soon you will be too." I hung up the phone. I put the truck in gear. I had no money. I had no food. But I had a meeting with a shark, and I wasn't going to be late. The game was no longer about defense. It was time to hunt. The phone vibrated against my thigh like a nervous tick. I looked down at the cracked screen of my prepaid mobile. The photo I had assigned to the contact was from 5 years ago. It was a picture of Lily on the day she landed her first teaching job. Her smile in the photo was wide and genuine, her eyes crinkling at the corners the way her mother's used to. She looked like the girl who used to sit on my lap while I explained how a carburetor worked. She looked like my daughter. But when I slid my thumb across the screen to answer, the voice that came through the speaker did not belong to that girl. It sounded like a stranger. It sounded like a recording of a hostage reading a ransom note. "Daddy," she said. There was no warmth in the word. It was an accusation. It was a weapon. "Lily," I said, my voice raspy from the dry heat of the truck cab. "I was just at the bank." I know she cut me off, her voice rising an octave into a shrill panic. "Travis just called me. He is furious, Daddy. He is absolutely humiliated. Do you have any idea what you have done? Mr. Polson called him personally. He said you were making a scene. He said you looked like a vagrant and you were threatening the staff. How could you embarrass us like that?" I gripped the steering wheel, the leather hot under my palm. "I did not threaten anyone, Lily. I asked for my own money. The money I worked 40 years to save. Your husband locked my accounts. He did not lock them, he secured them," she snapped, reciting the line as if she had memorized it from a script. "He is protecting you from yourself. You are not well, Daddy. We have the medical reports. We know about the episodes. Travis says you are forgetting things. He says you are paranoid. And going into the bank screaming at poor Sarah, proving him right." I closed my eyes. The narrative was already spun. Travis had turned my righteous indignation into a symptom of madness. He had taken my survival instinct and painted it as dementia. And my daughter, the woman I taught to ride a bike, the woman I held when she cried over her first heartbreak, was buying every word of it. "I am not sick, Lily," I said quietly. "I am homeless. Because of you. Because of your husband. I slept in my truck last night. I have not eaten since yesterday. Does that sound like protection to you?" "Do not try to guilt-trip me," she sobbed. "This is your choice. You are doing this to yourself. We have a room for you. We have a bed. All you have to do is come home and sign the papers. Why are you being so stubborn? Why do you have to fight us on everything? You are old, Daddy. You cannot take care of yourself anymore. Why can't you just accept that we are trying to help you?" The words hit me like physical blows. "You are old. You are stubborn. Just sign. It was the same mantra Travis had chanted at the wedding. Now coming from her, it sounded even more twisted. It was a lullaby meant to put me to sleep so they could pick my pockets. "Lily, listen to me," I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "Travis owes money. A lot of money. He is not doing this for me. He is doing this because he needs my house to pay his debts." "Stop it," she screamed. "Stop lying. Travis is a businessman. He is successful. You are just jealous because you never understood ambition. You were happy being a mechanic your whole life. You do not understand how the world works, Daddy. You are confused. You are making up stories because your brain is failing. Just like Dr. Robinson said." I felt a cold hollowness open up in my chest. It wasn't just that she believed him. It was that she looked down on me. She was ashamed of me. She was ashamed of the grease under my fingernails that had paid for her braces. She was ashamed of the blue-collar sweat that had paid for her degree. Travis had not just stolen my money, he had stolen my legacy. He had rewritten my history in her eyes, turning me from a provider into a burden. "Is that what you think?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You think I am just a confused old mechanic?" "I think you are selfish," she spat out the word. "You are sitting on that big house all alone while Travis and I are trying to build a future. We have a baby on the way, Daddy. Do you not care about your grandchild? Do you want your grandchild to grow up struggling because you were too selfish to share what you do not even need?" There it was, the entitlement. The naked greed wrapped in the flag of family values. She truly believed that my property was already hers. She believed that my refusal to be robbed was an act of aggression against her unborn child. "I cared about you, Lily," I said. "I cared about you more than I cared about myself. That is why I saved. That is why I drove this old truck. That is why I never took a vacation. Everything I did was for you." "Then prove it," she challenged, her voice dropping to a cold hiss that sounded exactly like Travis. "Prove you love me. Come to the lawyer's office. Travis set up a meeting. Sign the power of attorney. If you do not, if you keep playing these games, then Travis is right. You are too far gone. And I cannot have a dangerous, unstable man around my baby." The line went silent for a second, waiting for my capitulation. She expected me to break. She expected the threat of losing my grandchild to bring me to my knees. But she did not know who she was talking to anymore. She was talking to the father she remembered, the soft man who gave her everything she asked for. She did not know she was speaking to the man who had silently built an empire while she was sleeping. She was right about one thing. The father she knew was gone. He had died the moment she watched her husband drill a lock into my front door and said nothing. I took a deep breath, inhaling the stale air of the truck. "I will be at the lawyer's office," I said. "Oh, thank God," she exhaled, the relief palpable. "I knew you would come to your senses. I knew you would do the right thing. We will see you there, Daddy. It is going to be okay. We will take care of you." She hung up. I stared at the black screen of the phone. She thought she had won. She thought she had bullied the old man into submission. She thought she was going to a surrender ceremony. She did not know she was inviting herself to an execution. I started the truck. The fuel gauge was hovering just above empty, but it was enough. It was enough to get me to the other side of town. It was enough to get me to the meeting where I would finally introduce my daughter to the man she had never bothered to know. I put the truck in gear and pulled out of the parking lot. My stomach growled, but the hunger felt distant now. I was fueled by something much colder and much more powerful than food. I was fueled by the absolute clarity saw of a man who has nothing left to lose. Lily wanted her inheritance. She was in a hurry to get what she deserved. Fine. I would give it to her. I would give her exactly what she deserved. I pulled the truck into the cracked asphalt lot of Joe's all-day breakfast, a greasy spoon on the industrial side of town, where the coffee tasted like battery acid, and the clientele consisted mostly of truckers and insomniacs. It was the last place anyone would look for a millionaire or a man being hunted by his own family. It was perfect. I walked inside, keeping my head down. The air was thick with the smell of frying bacon and old cigarette smoke that had seeped into the vinyl booths decades ago. I spotted him in the back corner booth facing the door. Silas Blackwood. Even in a dim diner, he looked out of place. He was wearing a navy suit that cost more than the building we were sitting in, but he wore it with a casual indifference that made him invisible to the untrained eye. He was reading a newspaper, a physical one, not a phone. Old school, just like me. I slid into the booth opposite him. The vinyl squeaked in protest. A waitress with tired eyes dropped a mug of coffee in front of me without asking, spilling a little in the saucer. "You look like hell," Bernie Blackwood said, without looking up from the sports section. "I feel like hell," I replied, taking a sip. The coffee was scalding and bitter. It woke me up. "I spent the night in my truck. My daughter just called me. She thinks I am senile. She thinks I am the villain." Blackwood folded the paper and set it aside. He looked at me with eyes that were gray and cold like winter granite. He did not offer sympathy. He offered solutions. "She is scared," Blackwood said. "Fear makes people stupid, and right now she has every reason to be scared, even if she does not know why." He reached into his leather briefcase, which was resting on the floor, and pulled out a thick manila envelope. He slid it across the sticky table. It landed between my coffee and the sugar dispenser with a heavy thud. "This is the why," Blackwood said. I opened the envelope. Inside was a stack of papers, photos, and spreadsheets. The first page was a credit report, but it was bleeding red ink. I scanned the numbers. My breath hitched in my throat. Credit card debt, $80,000. Personal loans, $150,000. Second mortgage on their current apartment, $90,000. But that was just the appetizer. I flipped the page. This was a private intelligence report, compiled by Blackwood's investigators. "Travis owes money to the Slavic syndicate in Chicago," I read out loud, my voice barely a whisper. "Gambling debts. Online crypto scams. High-risk futures trading." "Keep reading," Blackwood said quietly, taking a sip of his own tea. "Look at the total." I looked at the bottom line. The number was circled in red marker. $2,140,000. I stared at the number. It was astronomical. It was impossible. How could a mediocre real estate agent rack up that kind of debt without anyone noticing? "He has been bleeding money for 3 years, Blackwood explained. "He has a gambling addiction, Bernie. Sports betting. Poker. But the real killer was a Ponzi scheme he tried to start last year. He borrowed money from loan sharks to pay off early investors, trying to look like a genius. The scheme collapsed 6 months ago. The sharks want their money, and they do not send collection letters. They send men with baseball bats." I looked at the photos in the file. There were pictures of Travis meeting with 2 large men in the parking lot of a strip club. In one photo, Travis looked terrified, pleading with his hands. In another, one of the men had him pinned against his car. The date on the photo was 3 days ago. They gave him a deadline, Blackwood said. 48 hours. He has until Friday at noon to come up with the principal plus interest, or they start breaking bones. I closed the file. My hands were shaking. "That is why he needs the house," I said. "He does not want to live in it. He needs to leverage it immediately." "Exactly." Blackwood nodded. "He found your old geological surveys, Bernie. He knows about the gas deposit. He told the sharks he has a property worth $4 million that he can transfer to them as collateral. That is his get-out-of-jail-free card." "But he can't transfer it," I said. "Not without my signature. Even with the medical guardianship, he would need a judge to approve a property transfer, and that takes months. He is desperate, Blackwood said. He plans to forge your signature on a quitclaim deed using the power of attorney as cover. He thinks if he hands them the deed, they will back off. He doesn't care about the legality. He just wants to survive the week. I leaned back against the booth. The magnitude of the situation washed over me. Travis wasn't just a greedy son-in-law. He was a drowning man pulling my daughter down with him. If he didn't get that house, these men would come for him. And they might come for Lily. He is dangerous, I whispered. He is cornered. Which makes him predictable, Blackwood said. He called my office this morning. Or rather, he called the number I set up for Archon Capital. He thinks he is setting up a meeting with a hard money lender to bridge the gap. He wants to sign the papers tomorrow morning. I looked at Blackwood. He was watching me, waiting for the order. I could stop this right now. I could call the police, give them this file, and Travis would go to prison for fraud. Lily would be heartbroken but safe. But that wasn't enough. If I sent him to jail now, Lily would blame me. She would think I destroyed her husband out of spite. She would spend the rest of her life thinking he was a victim of my stubbornness. She needed to see who he really was. She needed to see him beg. She needed to see him trade her future for his safety. I do not want to stop him, I said, my voice hardening. I want to help him hang himself. Blackwood raised an eyebrow. Elaborate. Set the meeting, I said. Tell him Archon Capital is ready to sign. Tell him to bring the power of attorney and the deed. Tell him to bring Lily. He thinks you are destitute, Blackwood reminded me. He thinks you are sleeping in a truck. If you show up at the meeting, he will bolt. No, he won't, I said, because I am going to tell him I surrender. I pulled out my burner phone. I opened the text thread with Travis. I am going to text him now. I am going to tell him I am tired. I am hungry. I am confused. I am going to tell him he wins. I will sign whatever he wants just to get a warm bed. Blackwood smiled, a cold shark-like smile. You are going to lure him into the kill box. Exactly, I said. Set the meeting at your downtown office. The one with the mahogany boardroom and the view of the city. Make it look intimidating. Make it look like money. And you, Blackwood asked. I am going to go shopping, I said. I have a suit in my truck, but I need a haircut. I need a shave. When I walk into that room tomorrow, I do not want him to see the mechanic. I want him to see the man who owns the building. Blackwood closed his briefcase. The snap of the latches sounded like a gunshot in the quiet diner. I will have the papers ready, he said. The real papers. And bring security, I added. Those loan sharks. If they are tracking him, they might follow him to the meeting. I have a feeling they will. Blackwood said, standing up. I will have my team on standby. This is going to be a volatile transaction, Bernie. Good, I said, staring at the grease stains on the table. I want it volatile. I want him to feel the pressure until he cracks. Blackwood nodded and walked out, leaving me alone in the booth. I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. I typed the message. Travis, you win. I am cold. I have no money. I cannot do this anymore. I will sign. Just tell me where to go. Please help me. I hit send. I sat there watching the little circle spin, knowing that message was the key to the trap. I wasn't just giving up. I was baiting the hook. 3 seconds later, the phone buzzed. Thank God, Dad, Travis replied. You are making the right choice. We love you. Meet us at 10 a.m. tomorrow at 500 Financial District, Belvedere Suite 400. We will take care of everything. I stared at the words, we love you. It was the biggest lie he had ever told, and tomorrow I was going to make him eat it. I left a $20 bill on the table for a $3 coffee and walked out into the daylight. The hunger in my stomach was gone, replaced by a cold, hard knot of anticipation. The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for the rat to come for the cheese. I stepped out of the diner and into the harsh glare of the mid-morning sun, feeling the weight of the phone in my pocket like a stone. The text was sent. The trap was armed. But a digital surrender was not enough. Travis needed to believe he had broken me physically and mentally. He needed to walk into that meeting room expecting to see a crushed insect, not a scorpion. I drove the truck to an old barber shop on 5th Street, the kind with a spinning pole and the smell of talcum powder and bay rum. I sat in the vinyl chair and looked at myself in the mirror. The man staring back was tired. His eyes were red-rimmed and his skin was gray from sleeping in the cab. Perfect. I told the barber to give me a shave but to leave it rough. I wanted to look like a man who tried to clean up but failed. I wanted to look like a man who was holding on to his dignity by a thread. As the razor scraped against my throat, I closed my eyes and pictured Travis. I could see him in my kitchen right now. He was probably showing the text message to Lily, his face twisted into that smug, victorious grin. "See, Lily," he would be saying. "I told you he would crack. Old dogs bark, but they always come to heel when they get hungry." I imagined the relief washing over him. The loan sharks were breathing down his neck, threatening to shatter his kneecaps, and suddenly the clouds had parted. The stubborn old man had folded. The house was his. The $4 million in gas rights were his. He was probably already spending the money in his head buying a new Porsche, booking a suite in Vegas, planning how to hide the assets from the taxman. He was celebrating his victory. He did not know he was toasting to his own execution. My phone buzzed against my thigh. I ignored it until the barber slapped a hot towel on my face. I pulled the phone out. It was a picture message from Travis. It was a selfie. Him and Lily standing in my living room. He was holding up a bottle of my best scotch, the 18-year-old single malt I had been saving for a special occasion. He was beaming, giving a thumbs up. Lily was smiling too, but her eyes were puffy. She looked relieved. She thought the war was over. She thought she was getting her father back, the compliant, broken version she could manage. The caption read, "We are so glad you decided to do the right thing, Dad. We ordered breakfast for the meeting. Your favorites. My favorites." He did not know my favorites. He probably ordered stale donuts and lukewarm coffee. I stared at the photo. He was drinking my scotch. He was standing in my house gloating over my surrender. He truly believed he was the smartest man in the room. I paid the barber with the last of my cash, leaving me with exactly $0 to my name. It didn't matter. By noon tomorrow, I would have access to $15 million. I walked back to the truck, running a hand over my jaw. I felt exposed. I felt dangerous. I drove to the location Blackwood had sent me. It was a small corporate apartment downtown near the financial district, a safe house where I could prepare without Travis's spies spotting me. I needed to sleep in a real bed. I needed to iron the Italian suit. I needed to practice the look of defeat one last time before I flipped the table. Tonight Travis would sleep like a king, thinking he had won the lottery. Tonight I would sleep like a soldier on the eve of battle, cleaning his rifle and counting his rounds. I parked the truck in the underground garage and carried the garment bag over my shoulder. "Enjoy the scotch, Travis." I whispered into the darkness of the garage. "Drink it all. Because tomorrow, you are going to choke on it." The glass elevator shot up 50 floors in 30 seconds, a silent silver bullet aimed at the sky. Inside, the pressure built in my ears, matching the pressure in my chest. I adjusted the cuffs of my bespoke charcoal gray suit. It fit me like a second skin, the Italian wool moving with me instead of against me. My freshly shaved face felt strange in the mirror reflection, cool and exposed. The man staring back was not the mechanic who smelled of oil and sweat. He was sharp. He was dangerous. He was ready. I stepped out onto the 50th floor. The reception area of Blackwood and Partners was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, making the cars below look like ants. The floors were white marble, the walls were mahogany, and the silence was absolute, broken only by the soft click of expensive shoes. Blackwood was waiting for me, by the reception desk. He looked me up and down, and a slow, predatory smile spread across his face. "You clean up well, Bernie," he said. I checked my Patek Philippe watch. It was 9:55. "Are they here?" I asked. Blackwood nodded. "They arrived 5 minutes ago. They are in conference room A." Travis brought backup. 2 large men, cheap suits, bulging pockets. He introduced them as his financial consultants. "Sharks," I corrected. Blackwood's smile widened. "Indeed. My security team is monitoring them. If they twitch the wrong way, they will be escorted out through the window." I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment I had been rehearsing in my head for 3 days. "Let us go," I said. I followed Blackwood down the long corridor. The doors to conference room A were double-frosted glass monstrosities. I could see the blurry outlines of 4 people inside. Travis was pacing back and forth, his silhouette agitated. Lily was sitting still, her head bowed. The 2 sharks were standing by the wall like statues. Blackwood pushed the doors open. The conversation inside stopped instantly. Travis spun around, a triumphant grin already plastered on his face. He was wearing the same suit he wore to the wedding, now slightly rumpled. He looked like a man who had just won the lottery and couldn't wait to cash the ticket. Finally, he boomed, spreading his arms wide. "Dad, I was beginning to worry you got lost. I told the receptionist you were probably confused about the floor number." His voice trailed off as I stepped fully into the room. The grin faltered. His eyes widened. He scanned me from the top of my perfectly styled silver hair to the tips of my handmade Italian leather shoes. He blinked as if his brain couldn't process the visual data. He was looking for the mechanic in the stained overalls. He was looking for the broken old man who slept in a truck. Instead, he found a titan. "Bernie," he stammered, his confidence cracking for a split second. "What? Where did you get those clothes? Did you rob a thrift store?" I ignored him. I walked past him without a glance, my stride purposeful and heavy. I pulled out the leather chair at the head of the long mahogany table, the seat of power, and sat down. I placed my hands on the polished wood, my gold watch gleaming under the recessed lighting. I looked at Lily. She was staring at me with her mouth slightly open. Her eyes were red from crying, but now they were filled with confusion. She didn't recognize her own father. "Hello, Lily," I said, my voice calm and authoritative. "Daddy," she whispered. "You look different." "I look like myself," I corrected, "for the first time in 10 years. Travis shook his head, shaking off the shock. He laughed, a nervous, forced sound. Okay, very dramatic. You rented a suit. You rented a fancy office for an hour to save face. I get it. You want to go out with a bang. That is cute, Dad, really. But let us cut the theatrics. My associates here have a tight schedule." He gestured to the 2 thugs by the wall. They didn't look like financial consultants. They looked like they broke fingers for a living. One of them, a man with a scar over his eyebrow, was staring at Blackwood with a frown of recognition. He knew who this firm was. He knew they were out of their league. Travis tossed a thick document onto the table. It slid across the wood and stopped in front of me. "Here is the deal," Bernie Travis said, his voice regaining its arrogance. "This is the quitclaim deed and the full power of attorney. You sign these and we give you the keys to a nice efficiency apartment at the Shady Oaks retirement community. Meals included. Cable TV. It is a good life, Dad. Better than sleeping in a truck." He leaned forward, placing his hands on the table, invading my space. And in exchange, he hissed so only I could hear. "I forget that you threatened me. I forget that you are crazy. And maybe, just maybe, I let you see your grandchild someday." I looked at the document. It was garbage. A poorly drafted attempt at theft. I looked up at Travis. I looked him dead in the eye. I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable, until he started to shift his weight. "You brought sharks into my tank, Travis," I said softly. "What are you talking about?" he snapped. "Sign the paper, old man. I don't have time for your riddles." "I am not signing that," I said. Travis's face turned red. "We had a deal. You texted me. You said you surrendered." "I lied," I said. The room went cold. The two thugs pushed off the wall, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "You lied," Travis repeated, his voice rising. "You cannot lie to me. I own you. I have the medical guardianship. I have the power. You have nothing," I said, standing up slowly. "You have a forged document from a doctor who is currently being investigated by the medical board. You have a mountain of debt that is about to crush you. And you have two very angry men standing behind you who are realizing right now that you promised them something you cannot deliver." Travis spun around, looking at his consultants. They weren't looking at him. They were looking at me. They were looking at the suit, the watch, the office. They were doing the math. "This is Blackwood and Partners," the scar-faced thug said, his voice gravelly. "They don't rent offices by the hour. This is a billion-dollar firm." Travis looked back at me, panic starting to seep into his eyes. "What is going on, Bernie? Who is paying for this?" "I am," I said. I reached into my jacket pocket. Travis flinched, thinking I was going for a weapon. I pulled out a single crisp document. It was on heavy bond paper embossed with the Blackwood seal. I slid it across the table. "This is what you are going to sign, Travis," I said. He looked at it. "Acknowledgement of debt and release of claims." "What is this?" he whispered. "It is a confession," I said. "It states that you forged my signature. It states that you attempted to defraud a senior citizen. And it states that you accept full responsibility for your own debts." He looked up at me, his face pale. "I am not signing this. You are crazy. I am going to have you committed." Blackwood stepped forward from the corner where he had been silently observing. "Mr. Miller Blackwood," said, his voice smooth and deadly. "If you do not sign that document, we will release the file we have on you to the district attorney and to your friends in Chicago." Travis froze. He looked at Blackwood, then at the thugs, then at Lily. Lily was shaking. "Travis, what is going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What debts? Who are these men?" "Shut up, Lily," Travis snapped. "Do not talk to my daughter that way," I roared, slamming my fist onto the table. The sound echoed like a thunderclap. Travis jumped back. The thugs took a step forward but stopped when Blackwood pressed a button on the wall. The frosted glass cleared, revealing 4 armed security guards standing just outside the door. The trap was sprung. The cage door had slammed shut. Travis looked around wild-eyed. He was a rat in a maze, and he had just hit a dead end. "You set me up!" he screamed. "You senile old bastard, you set me up!" I adjusted my cufflinks. "I told you, Travis," I said, my voice ice cold. "I am not senile. I am patient. And my patience just ran out." Travis looked at the confession letter I had slid across the mahogany table like it was a poisonous snake. His face twitched, a spasm of pure, unadulterated panic fighting against his ingrained arrogance. He looked at the armed security guards standing like statues behind the glass, then back at me, sitting in the leather chair wearing a suit that cost more than his car. The math was not adding up in his head. He could not reconcile the Bernie who changed his own oil with the Bernie who commanded a boardroom on the 50th floor. "Enough of this circus," Travis shouted, his voice cracking. He grabbed the heavy document I had given him and crumpled it into a ball, throwing it onto the floor. "You think a fancy office scares me. You think a rented suit makes you powerful. You are nothing, Bernie. You are a broke, lonely old man who is losing his mind." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out his own document. The power of attorney. The same one he had tried to force on me at the wedding. He slammed it down on the table with a violence that made the water glasses tremble. "Sign it," he screamed, spittle flying from his lips. "Sign the damn paper right now, or I swear to God I will have you declared incompetent before lunch. I will have you locked in a state facility so fast, your head will spin. I have the doctors. I have the judges. I have everything." He was bluffing. He had nothing but a forged signature and a mountain of debt. But he was banking on fear. He was banking on the idea that I was still the passive father-in-law who just wanted everyone to get along. I did not even look at his document. I looked at Blackwood. "Show him the real paperwork," I said softly. Blackwood opened a black leather folio. He did not slam it. He did not shout. He slid a single document across the polished wood with the precision of a card dealer. It stopped exactly in front of Lily. "Read it, Lily." Blackwood said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Read what your husband has been hiding from you." Lily looked at me, her eyes wide and frightened. Then she looked down at the paper. Her hands shook as she picked it up. "What is this?" she whispered. "Asset waiver and debt acknowledgement." "Read the numbers, Lily," I said. She scanned the page. Her breath hitched. She let out a small whimper like a kicked puppy. $2 million, she gasped. "Travis, what is this? It says you owe $2 million to... Who are these people?" Travis snatched the paper from her hand. He scanned it, his eyes darting back and forth. His face went from red to a ghostly white. "Where did you get this?" he hissed, looking at Blackwood. "This is private financial information. This is illegal. It is public record when you are being hunted." Blackwood replied coolly. "We bought your debt." "Travis?" "Well, technically, my client bought your debt." Travis looked at me. "Your client?" "Me," I said. "I bought your debt this morning. The men you owe money to in Chicago, they were very happy to sell the note for 50 cents on the dollar. They wanted cash, not promises." Travis took a step back. He looked at the two thugs standing against the wall, his muscle, his intimidation factor. "Do something," he screamed at them, pointing at me. "Get him. Make him sign the power of attorney. Break his fingers if you have to. That is what I am paying you for." The room went silent. The thug with the scar over his eye, the one who looked like he chewed gravel for breakfast, slowly peeled himself off the wall. He walked toward the table. His steps were heavy, deliberate. Travis smiled a cruel, twisted expression. Finally. He thought the violence was about to start. He thought he was about to see the old man bleed. The thug stopped. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the leather folio on the table. Specifically, he was looking at the gold embossed logo stamped on the cover. Blackwood and Partners. The thug looked at Blackwood. He looked at the security guards outside. Then he looked at Travis with eyes that were flat and dead. "We are leaving," the thug said. "What?" Travis shrieked. "You can't leave. I promised you $5,000 each. Do your job." The thug reached out and grabbed Travis by the lapels of his cheap suit. He yanked him forward, lifting him onto his toes. "Listen to me, you little rat," the thug growled, his voice low and terrifying. "You didn't tell us who we were up against. You said it was a family dispute. You said it was an old mechanic. He is a mechanic." Travis gagged, clawing at the thug's hands. The thug slammed Travis back into his chair. "That man is represented by Blackwood," the thug said, pointing a thick finger at my lawyer. "Do you know who Blackwood represents? They represent the people who lend money to the people we work for. We do not touch Blackwood clients. That is a death sentence." The thug spit on the floor next to Travis's shoe. "You are on your own, kid. And if I were you, I would start running." The two men turned and walked out. They didn't even look back. They walked past the security guards and disappeared into the elevator. Travis sat in the chair hyperventilating. His backup was gone. His intimidation tactic had evaporated. He was alone in a room with a lawyer who could ruin him and a father-in-law he had severely underestimated. He looked at Lily. She was staring at him with horror. "You lied to me," she whispered. "You told me we were rich. You told me the business was booming. You owe $2 million. "Baby, listen to me," Travis stammered, reaching for her hand. "It is an investment strategy. I leverage debt to build equity. Once we get the house, once we get the gas rights, I can pay it all off. We will be set for life." "I did it for us, Lily pulled her hand away, as if he were burning her. "You tried to put my father in a home. You locked him out of his house. You made me believe he was crazy, all to pay off your gambling debts." "It wasn't gambling," Travis shouted, standing up again, his control snapping. "It was business. And he is crazy, look at him. He is playing dress-up in a suit, acting like he is the godfather. He is nothing, Lily. He is a hurdle. And we need to clear him." He turned to me. His eyes were wild manic. He grabbed the power of attorney again. "Sign the paper, Bernie. I am not asking any more. I am done playing nice." He lunged. It happened fast, but not fast enough. Travis vaulted over the corner of the table, his hands reaching for my throat. He was 30 years younger than me. He was desperate. He wanted to hurt me. He wanted to squeeze the life out of the thing standing between him and salvation. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. Blackwood didn't move either. Before Travis could touch me, the frosted glass door slid open, and the head of security, a man named Marcus, who looked like he was carved out of granite, stepped in. Marcus caught Travis in midair. It looked effortless. He grabbed Travis by the back of his suit jacket and the belt of his pants and slammed him face first onto the mahogany table. The sound of the impact was sickening, a wet crunch of cartilage against wood. Travis screamed, a high-pitched sound of pain and shock. Marcus pinned him there, his arm twisted behind his back, his face pressed into the polished surface right next to the document he wanted me to sign. "Do not touch the client," Marcus said calmly, leaning his weight onto Travis. I stood up slowly. I adjusted my jacket. I walked around the table until I was standing right next to Travis's head. He looked up at me, one eye already swelling shut, blood trickling from his nose onto the expensive table. "You are insane," Travis wheezed. "You are going to jail for assault." I leaned down close to his ear. "You tried to assault me in a room full of witnesses and cameras," I whispered. "Every inch of this office is recorded, Travis. You just committed attempted battery on a senior citizen. That is a felony. And since I own your debt, I can attach a lien to your freedom." I looked at Lily. She was standing in the corner, trembling, her hands covering her mouth. She looked at her husband, pinned to the table like a butterfly in a display case. Then she looked at me. "Daddy," she sobbed. "Stop it. Please stop it. He is hurt." "He is hurt," I asked, my voice rising. "He tried to strangle me, Lily. He tried to steal my house. He tried to erase my existence. And you are worried about his nose." I picked up the debt acknowledgement form, the one Travis had refused to sign. "I am done playing games," I said. I walked to the wall and pressed a button. A motorized screen descended from the ceiling, covering the panoramic view of the city. The lights in the room dimmed. A projector hummed to life. "You want to know why I am wearing this suit, Travis?" I asked. "You want to know how I afforded this office? You want to know why the loan sharks ran away?" Travis groaned, trying to struggle against Marcus's grip. "Let me show you what you really tried to steal," I said. I clicked the remote. The screen lit up with a bank statement. It wasn't a checking account. It wasn't a savings account. It was a trust fund statement from the Atlas Global Bank. The numbers were large, bold, undeniable. Travis stopped struggling. Lily stopped crying. They both stared at the screen, at the balance at the bottom. $15,450,000. Travis made a sound, a choking gurgle. That is impossible, he whispered. You are a mechanic. You fix trucks. I was a mechanic, I corrected. My father was an inventor. He left me everything, but he made me wait. He made me live a humble life to see who would stick by me when I had nothing. I looked at Lily. Her face was a mask of shock. I was going to give it to you, I said softly. All of it. I was going to set you up for life. I was going to pay off your house. I was going to send your children to college. I clicked the remote again. The screen changed. It showed a geological survey map of my property. The red lines indicated the shale gas deposits underneath the old wooden house. Estimated value, $4 million. Travis started to cry. Real tears, tears of a man who realized he had held a winning lottery ticket and used it to blow his nose. You knew, he sobbed. You knew the whole time. I knew, I said. And I waited. I waited to see if you were a man or a leech. I signaled to Marcus. He pulled Travis up from the table and shoved him back into his chair. Travis slumped there, defeated, broken, bleeding. Now, I said, placing a pen in front of him. You are going to sign the debt acknowledgement. You are going to admit that you owe me $2 million. And then you are going to sign a divorce settlement. Divorce, Lily gasped, stepping forward. Daddy, no. I love him. I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. He was going to sell me to a nursing home, Lily, I said. He was going to sell your inheritance to pay his bookie. That is not love. That is a hostage situation. I pointed at the door. You have a choice, Lily. You can walk out that door with him and share his debt. You can spend the next 20 years paying off his mistakes. Or you can stay here, sign the divorce papers, and I will clear the slate. I won't give you the millions. Not yet. You have to earn that back. But I will give you a fresh start. The room was silent. The hum of the projector fan was the only sound. Travis looked at Lily. His eyes were pleading. Baby, don't listen to him. We can fight this. He is bluffing. I am not bluffing, I said. Lily looked at Travis. She looked at the blood on his face. She looked at the greed in his eyes that even fear couldn't hide. Then she looked at the screen with the $15 million. She took a step toward me. I am sorry, Travis, she whispered. Travis screamed, a sound of pure animal rage. But it was over. The trap had snapped shut, and the rat was finally caught. Travis wiped the blood from his nose with the back of his hand, smearing a red streak across his face. He looked at the empty doorway where his muscle had just deserted him, and then he looked back at me. Panic was setting in, but underneath the fear was a layer of entitlement so thick it was almost impressive. He could not process the idea that he had lost. His brain was wired to believe that he was the predator, and I was the prey, and predators do not lose to old mechanics in rented suits. You think you are clever, Bernie? Travis spat, his voice wet and shaking. You think buying my debt gives you the right to lecture me? You are nothing. You are a sad old man playing dress-up. That house is mine. Do you hear me? I earned it. I put up with your stories. I put up with your smell. I put up with your pathetic little life for 3 years waiting for you to die. That equity is my payment for services rendered. He stood up, swaying slightly, gripping the edge of the table. It is a rotted piece of wood sitting on a dirt lot, he screamed, his face twisting into a mask of ugly greed. It is trash just like you. But it is my trash. I have the medical power of attorney. I have the rights. You can threaten me with debt all you want, but you cannot take the asset. I will fight you in every court in the state. I will drag you through the mud until you are broke and broken. I watched him rant. It was fascinating in a morbid way. He was a man standing on the deck of the Titanic shouting that he owned the iceberg. "You are right about one thing, Travis," I said, my voice cutting through his shouting like a razor. "It is a piece of wood on a dirt lot. But you are wrong about the value. You have been looking at the surface. You never bothered to look at what was underneath." I turned to Blackwood. "Light it up." Blackwood nodded and pressed a button on the wall panel. The motorized blinds descended, shutting out the morning sun and plunging the room into a twilight gloom. A low hum filled the air as a projector screen lowered from the ceiling. Travis stopped shouting. He looked around, confused by the sudden change in atmosphere. Lily looked up from her hands, her eyes wide and fearful. I picked up a small remote control from the table. "You called me a mechanic, Travis," I said. "You are right. I fix things. And to fix things, you have to understand how they work. You have to look at the schematics. You have to look at the numbers." I pointed the remote at the screen and clicked. A beam of blue light cut through the darkness, hitting the white canvas. It was not a picture. It was a digital dashboard from the Atlas Global Bank, one of the most exclusive financial institutions in the world. The logo was a golden globe held by a titan. At the top of the screen in bold black letters was the account holder name: the Bernard Kowalski Revocable Trust. Travis squinted. "What is this?" he muttered. "Some kind of fake statement." "You can Photoshop anything, Bernie. This proves nothing." "Look at the date," I said. Today's date was blinking in the corner. Live feed. "Now look at the balance." I watched his eyes scan down the screen. I watched them pass the account number. I watched them hit the bottom line. His eyes stopped. He blinked. He leaned forward. $15,450,000.42. The silence in the room was absolute. It was heavy. It was the sound of the worldview shattering into a million pieces. Travis made a noise in the back of his throat, a dry, clicking sound. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. He was trying to find the decimal point. He was trying to convince himself it was $15,000. But the commas were in the right places. 15 million. Lily made a sound like she had been punched in the stomach. She stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. She walked toward the screen, her hand reaching out as if she wanted to touch the numbers to see if they were real. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice trembling so hard it was barely audible. "What is this? Is this real?" "It is real, Lily," I said, my voice soft but firm. "It has been real since before you were born. Your grandfather, Arthur, sold a patent in 1998. He left it all to me." She turned to look at me. Her face was pale, drained of blood. "But," she stammered, "we lived in that old house. I wore hand-me-downs. You drove that truck. You told me we couldn't afford a new car for graduation. You told me we had to be careful with the heating bill." "I did," I said. "And it broke my heart every time I said it. But I made a promise to your grandfather. He knew what money does to people, Lily. He knew it turns good people into lazy people and bad people into monsters. He made me wait 10 years. He made me live humbly to see if I could hold on to my soul." I looked at Travis. He was still staring at the screen, paralyzed. And he wanted me to see who would stick around when there was nothing to gain, I continued. He wanted me to see who loved Bernie the man and who loved Bernie the wallet. Travis finally tore his eyes away from the screen. He looked at me and the expression on his face was terrifying. It wasn't remorse. It wasn't shame. It was a hunger so raw, it looked like madness. 15 million, he whispered. The number rolled off his tongue like a prayer. "You have $15 million. I nodded. "And you knew," Travis said, his voice rising in pitch. "At the wedding, when I asked you to sign the house over, you knew you had $15 million in the bank." "I knew," I said. And you let me humiliate myself, he shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. You let me beg those loan sharks. You let me panic. You sat there with $15 million and watched me drown. I didn't watch you drown, Travis, I said, stepping closer to him. I watched you try to murder me. Murder, he gasped, stepping back. I just locked the door. You tried to put me in a state facility, I said, my voice dropping to a growl. You tried to take my freedom. You tried to erase my mind with a fake diagnosis. That is murder, Travis. It is a slow, cold, bureaucratic murder. And you did it for money. You did it for a house you thought was worth 300 grand. I gestured to the screen. Imagine what you would have done if you knew about this. Travis looked at the number again. I could see the gears turning in his head. I could see him calculating. If he had just been kind, if he had just waited 2 days, if he had treated me like a human being instead of an obstacle. He sank back into his chair, his legs giving out. He put his head in his hands. Oh my God, he moaned. Oh my God. I blew it. He wasn't sorry he hurt me. He was sorry he lost the jackpot. I looked at Lily. She was crying, silent tears streaming down her face. She wasn't looking at the money anymore. She was looking at me. Daddy, she said, you had this the whole time. When I was struggling with student loans, when we were trying to pay for the wedding. I would have paid them, Lily, I said. The trust unlocked yesterday. I had a check in my pocket at the wedding. $100,000, just to start. I was going to pay off your loans. I was going to buy you a house. She sobbed, a hand flying to her mouth. But you didn't want a gift, I said, my voice hardening. You wanted to take. You stood there, Lily. You stood there in your white dress, and you watched him bully me. You watched him threaten me, and you said nothing. You chose him. You chose the quick buck over your own father. I didn't know, she wailed. I was scared. He told me we were going to lose everything. You are going to lose everything, I said, because you bet on the wrong horse. I walked over to the table and picked up the remote again. But that is just the cash, I said. That is just the liquidity. Travis said the house was a rotted piece of wood. He said it was worthless. I clicked the remote. The screen flickered and changed. This time it was a geological map, a survey of the county commissioned 30 years ago and buried in the archives. My property was outlined in red. Underneath the soil, indicated by layers of color, was a massive deposit of Marcellus shale natural gas. Travis looked up. His eyes locked onto the new image. What is that? He whispered. That is why my father bought that land, I said. He wasn't just an inventor. He was a prospector. He bought the mineral rights in 1980. I pointed to the valuation in the corner of the document. Estimated subsurface value $4,200,000. Travis made a sound like a dying animal, a high-pitched, keening wail that came from the bottom of his soul. 4 million, he choked out. The house. The land. It is worth $4 million. And you tried to steal it for the price of a nursing home bed, I said. He fell out of his chair. He literally slid off the leather and hit the floor on his knees. He crawled toward me. He reached out and grabbed the hem of my pants. Dad. He wept shamelessly. Dad, please. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I was desperate. The guys in Chicago, they were going to kill me. I just needed to pay them back. I would have taken care of you. I swear. I would have given you the best room. Get off me, I said, stepping back. Dad. Please, he begged, clutching at the air. We can fix this. I can change. I can manage this for you. You need someone to manage the portfolio. I know real estate. I know finance. We can be partners. $15 million, Dad. We can rule this city. He was still trying to hustle. Even on his knees, even with his nose broken and his life in ruins, he was still trying to get a piece of the action. I looked down at him with pure disgust. I don't need a partner, Travis. And I certainly don't need a leech. I looked at Blackwood. Show him the last document. Blackwood placed a single sheet of paper on the table. This is the only thing you are going to manage, Travis Blackwood said. It was the debt acknowledgement. Travis looked at it. Then he looked at the screen with the millions. Then he looked at me. You can pay it, he whispered. 2 million is nothing to you. It is pocket change. You can write a check right now and save my life. Please, Bernie. Dad. Save me. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out my old leather wallet, the one with the cracked spine. I opened it. It was empty except for a single crumpled dollar bill I had found in the truck's ashtray that morning. I pulled out the dollar. I smoothed it out on the table next to his bleeding nose. I paid $2 million for your debt this morning, Travis, I said. I own you. And this, I pushed the dollar bill toward him. This is your change. This is what you are worth to me. Travis stared at the dollar bill. The single George Washington stared back at him, judging him. Lily let out a scream. It was a scream of realization, a scream of a woman who finally understood that the fairy tale was over and the nightmare had just begun. You own his debt, she gasped. You own us. I own him, I corrected. You, Lily, you have a choice. I pointed to the door. But choose carefully, because once you walk out of this room, the bank of Dad is closed forever. Travis was still staring at the $15 million balance on the screen, like a man trying to read his own obituary, but I was not done. I had broken his pride with the cash, but now I needed to break his greed with the dirt. I needed him to understand exactly what he had tried to sell for pennies. I walked back to the head of the table. The leather chair creaked as I leaned against it, my silhouette cast long against the glowing projection screen. You called my home a shack, Travis, I said, my voice low and reverberating in the silent room. You told the police it was a safety hazard. You told my daughter it was a burden that was dragging us all down. You looked at the peeling paint and the old porch, and you saw garbage. I clicked the remote in my hand. The image on the screen shifted. The bank statement vanished, replaced by a complex topographical map. It was a geological survey of the county, but it looked different than the ones you see in the library. This one was covered in heat signatures, deep reds and vibrant oranges swirling beneath the surface of the earth. Travis squinted through his swelling eye. He recognized the map, or at least he thought he did. I found those surveys in your attic, he croaked, his voice thick with blood and mucus. I saw them. I knew there was gas. That is why I told the lenders the land was worth something. I told them maybe 400,000 or 500,000. I laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. You found the surveys from 1985, Travis. You found the preliminary sketches my father drew up when he bought the land. You looked at 40-year-old data and thought you were a genius. I pointed the laser pointer at the screen. A red dot danced over the outline of my property. This is a survey from last month, I said. Commissioned by the Apex Energy Corporation. I pressed the button again. The map zoomed in. A cross-section of the earth appeared, showing layers of rock and sediment. My father was not just a tinkerer, I explained. He was a geologist before he was an inventor. He bought that land specifically because it sits directly on top of the thickest vein of the Marcellus Shale Formation in the state. He knew the technology to extract it did not exist yet. So he waited. He built a humble house on top of a gold mine, and he told me to wait too. Lily walked closer to the screen. She looked at the red layers of rock beneath the house she grew up in. The basement, she whispered. That is why we were never allowed to dig in the basement. Exactly, I said. I looked at Travis. He was trembling. He was doing the math in his head, trying to calculate the volume, trying to estimate the price per cubic foot. Apex Energy sent me a contract offer last week, I continued. They do not want to buy the land. They just want the mineral rights. They want to lease the subsurface access for 20 years. I clicked the remote one last time. A document appeared on the screen. It was a contract offer letter. The letterhead was blue and corporate. The numbers were bold and black. Travis leaned forward, his eyes bulging. He read the number. He blinked. He read it again. $4,200,000. The sound that came out of him was not human. It was a whimper, a high-pitched sound of physical pain. He grabbed his hair, pulling at the roots. 4 million, he gasped. Just for the gas. Just for the dirt. And that is just the signing bonus, I added, twisting the knife. The royalties are estimated at another $50,000 a month for the next 2 decades. Travis fell off his chair. He did not slump. He collapsed. He hit the floor with a heavy thud and stayed there on his hands and knees, staring at the carpet pattern as if the world had turned upside down. He realized then the magnitude of his mistake. He hadn't just tried to steal a house to pay off a debt. He had tried to steal a legacy. He had tried to trade a diamond for a piece of glass because he was too lazy to polish it. If you had just asked me, Travis, I said, looking down at him with pity. If you had come to me like a man and said, Bernie, I am in trouble, I need help. If you had treated me with respect. If you had treated my daughter with love instead of using her as a pawn. I paused, letting the words hang in the heavy air. I would have signed this contract and given you the money. I would have paid off your sharks. I would have made you rich. Travis looked up at me. His face was a mask of agony. The blood from his nose dripped onto his shirt, but he didn't notice. He was bleeding from the soul. I didn't know, he sobbed. I thought you were just old. You thought I was weak, I corrected. You thought because I drove a truck and wore work boots that I was stupid. You judged the book by the cover and you burned the library. Lily turned away from the screen. She looked at her husband groveling on the floor. She looked at the man she had married, the man she had defended, the man she had almost betrayed her father for. $4 million, she whispered to him. You tried to put my father in a nursing home for $4 million that you didn't even know existed. You were going to sell it for scraps. I didn't know, Travis wailed, reaching out for her leg. Baby, I swear. I thought it was just enough to cover the vig. I was trying to save us. You were trying to save yourself, I snapped. I walked over to the desk and picked up a file folder. And here is the best part, Travis. The part that is really going to keep you up at night in your prison cell. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a property deed. My father put a clause in the trust. If I died or became incapacitated, the land would bypass probate. It would not go to my next of kin automatically. Travis stopped crying. He looked up. It would go to a charitable trust, I said. The land would be donated to the state for a nature preserve. The mineral rights would be locked forever. I dropped the paper on the floor next to him. So even if your plan had worked, even if you had forged my signature, even if you had locked me away in a dark room until I forgot my own name, you would have gotten nothing. The moment you declared me incompetent, the asset would have vanished. You were chasing a ghost, Travis, and you ran right off a cliff. Travis stared at the paper. The realization crushed him. His entire scheme, his months of planning the bribes to the doctor, the locks on the doors. It was all for nothing. He had destroyed his marriage, his reputation, and his freedom for a prize he could never have won. He let out a scream. It was a scream of pure frustration of a gambler who bet everything on red and watched the ball land on black. He pounded his fists against the floor like a toddler. Why didn't you tell me? He screamed. Why didn't you say anything? Because I wanted to see who you were, I said coldly. And now I know. I turned to Blackwood. Get him out of my sight. Travis was still on the floor, his face pressed against the carpet, his chest heaving with sobs that sounded more like choking. The projection screen hummed above us, displaying the topographical map of my land, a $4 million treasure map he had tried to burn. Slowly, Travis lifted his head. His eyes were swollen, his nose crooked and bleeding, but something had shifted in his expression. The arrogance was gone. The rage was gone. What replaced it was something far more pathetic: calculation. He looked at the screen, at the numbers, and then at me. I could see the gears turning in his desperate mind. He realized that violence wouldn't work. Threats wouldn't work. So he reached for the only tool he had left: manipulation. He pushed himself up onto his knees. He crawled toward me, ignoring the blood dripping onto his shirt. He looked like a penitent sinner approaching an altar, except his god was money. "Pop," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Dad, please." He reached out and grabbed my hand. His palms were sweaty and cold. I didn't pull away. I wanted to see how far he would go. "I am sorry." He wept, tears mixing with the blood on his face. "I am so sorry. I was lost, Dad. The debt. It made me crazy. I wasn't thinking straight. I love you. You know I love you. I was just trying to protect the family. I thought if I could just get the money, I could fix everything. I could take care of Lily. I could take care of the baby." He squeezed my hand, looking up at me with wide, pleading eyes. "You have the money, Dad," he said, his voice gaining a frantic hope. "You have $15 million. You have $4 million in gas rights. That is generational wealth. You could pay off my debt right now. You could write a check for $2 million and not even feel it. It would be pocket change for you." He laughed, a hysterical, bubbly sound. "Think about it, Dad. We can start over. No more secrets, no more lies. You pay off the sharks and I will be the best son-in-law you ever had. I will manage the properties for you. I will make sure Lily never has to work again. We can be partners. We can be a real family." He looked at Lily, who was standing by the window, her back turned to us. "Lily, tell him," Travis pleaded. "Tell him we can fix this. We are having a baby, Dad. Your grandchild. Do you want your grandchild's father to be killed by loan sharks? Do you want your grandchild to grow up without a dad because of a misunderstanding?" I looked down at him. He was pathetic. He was using his unborn child as a bargaining chip again. He hadn't learned a thing. He still thought money could buy forgiveness. He still thought he could charm his way out of a bear trap. "You are right, Travis," I said softly. Travis froze. Hope flared in his eyes like a match in a dark room. "I am," he breathed. "Yes," I said. "I have the money. I have $15 million in the bank right now. I could write a check for $2 million this second. I could call the syndicate in Chicago and wire the funds before lunch. I could make all your problems disappear." Travis let out a sob of relief. He slumped forward, resting his forehead on my shoe. "Oh, thank God," he wept. "Thank God. Thank you, Dad. I knew you were a good man. I knew you wouldn't let me die. I promise I will pay you back. Every cent. I will work for you. I will do whatever you want." I reached into my pocket. Travis heard the rustle of fabric. He lifted his head, expecting to see a checkbook. He expected to see a pen. He expected salvation. Instead, I pulled out my old leather wallet, the one with the cracked spine and the worn edges. The wallet of a mechanic. I opened it slowly. It was empty except for a single crumpled bill I had found in the ashtray of my truck that morning. It was stained with coffee and wrinkled from years of being ignored. I pulled it out. I smoothed it against my thigh. "I bought your debt this morning, Travis. I said, my voice flat. I paid 50 cents on the dollar. It cost me $1 million cash. I did that to save my daughter from being collateral damage. Travis nodded eagerly. Yes, thank you. That is amazing. $1 million, wow. But that was business, I said. I held up the dollar bill. This is personal. I let the bill flutter from my fingers. It drifted through the air, slow and erratic, like a dead leaf falling from a tree. It landed on the carpet right in front of Travis's knees. George Washington stared up at him, green and indifferent. This is for you, I said. Travis stared at the dollar. He looked confused. What? What is this? That is your value, I said. That is what you are worth to me. $1. Travis looked up, his face crumbling. But the $2 million. You said you could pay it. I can, I said. And I did. But I didn't pay it to save you. I paid it to own you. You don't owe the sharks anymore, Travis. You owe me. I leaned down, getting right in his face. And I am a much worse creditor than they ever were. Because they just wanted money. I want justice. Travis stared at me, the hope draining out of his eyes, replaced by a cold, dawning horror. He realized then that I hadn't pulled out my wallet to give him a gift. I had pulled it out to give him a price tag. You are not a partner, I whispered. You are not family. You are a bad investment, and I am liquidating my assets. I stood up straight and turned my back on him. Pick it up, I said. What? Travis croaked. The dollar, I said. Pick it up. It is the last dollar you will ever get from this family. Frame it. Put it on your wall in prison. Let it remind you of the day you traded $15 million for a padlock on a door. Travis didn't move. He just stared at the crumpled bill on the expensive carpet, weeping silently. The sound of his sobbing filled the room, a pathetic eulogy for his own greed. I looked at Blackwood. Get him out of here, I said. I'm done. Marcus grabbed Travis by the collar of his jacket and hauled him to his feet like a sack of wet cement. Travis was sobbing uncontrollably, his legs dragging against the plush carpet as Marcus marched him toward the exit. I followed them, stopping just inside the threshold of the frosted glass doors. Lily stood behind me, shaking as she watched her husband being evicted from the high castle he thought he had conquered. The double doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the reception area. I expected it to be empty. I expected the two men from Chicago to be halfway to the airport by now, but they were there. They were leaning against the reception desk, ignoring the terrified receptionist waiting. They had not left the building. They had stepped out of the legal crosshairs to wait for their prey in the wild. When they saw Travis come out, broken, bleeding, and held up by security, they straightened up. The man with the scar stepped forward, blocking the path to the elevators. He looked at Travis with eyes that held zero compassion. Where is the paper? The scarred man asked, his voice like grinding stones. You said you would come out with the deed. You said the old man was a vegetable who would sign anything. Travis flailed in Marcus's grip. He lied. Travis shrieked, pointing a trembling hand back at me. He tricked us. He bought the debt. He paid the $2 million. You got your money. Let me go. The scarred man looked past Travis and locked eyes with me. I stood in the doorway, adjusting my cuffs, my face impassive. I gave a single slow nod, confirming the transaction. We got the principal, the scarred man said, turning his gaze back to Travis. The syndicate got their wire transfer. That closes the books on the loan. Travis sagged with relief. See, he gasped. It is over. I am clear. But the scarred man reached out and clamped a hand onto Travis's shoulder. His fingers dug deep into the muscle. The loan is clear, the man said. But there is a penalty for wasting our time, Travis. You brought us here on a lie. You told us we were squeezing a helpless senior citizen. You told us it was a guaranteed flip. You made us look stupid in front of a Blackwood lawyer. The second thug stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. In our line of work, reputation is currency. And you just spent hours. Travis's eyes went wide. No, wait. We can work this out. I can pay you. He has millions. I will get a divorce settlement. I will get half. The scarred man laughed, a dry, humorless bark. You are not getting anything, kid. You are dead weight. He nodded to Marcus. We will take it from here. Marcus looked at me for permission. I didn't say a word. I just turned my back. Marcus released his grip. Travis stumbled forward into the arms of the two men. They caught him efficiently, pinning his arms to his sides. It was a professional abduction, smooth and practiced. They turned him toward the service elevator, the one used for trash and deliveries. Travis twisted his head around his neck, straining to look at me through the glass doors. His face was a mask of sheer terror. Bernie, he screamed. Dad, help me. They are going to hurt me. You cannot let them take me. I am family. I stood there watching him. I thought about the lock on my door. I thought about the fake doctor. I thought about the nursing home brochure he had left on my kitchen counter. I pressed the button on the wall. The frosted glass of the conference room doors began to slide shut, slowly closing the gap between my world and his. Dad, please. Travis wailed, his voice cracking as he was dragged across the marble floor. Lily, help me. Lily stepped up beside me. She watched her husband being hauled away by the consequences of his own choices. She did not call out. She did not run to him. She just watched a single tear tracking through the makeup on her cheek. The service elevator dinged. The doors opened. The men shoved Travis inside. I am sorry, Travis, I whispered to the closing glass. But my insurance does not cover liability for stupidity. The elevator doors slid shut, cutting off his final scream. The reception area was silent again. The problem had been removed. Now it was just me and my daughter, and the 15 million reasons why our relationship would never be the same. The silence in the reception area was heavier than the noise had been. The ghost of Travis's screams still seemed to hang in the air, vibrating against the marble walls. Lily stood by the window, looking out at the city skyline, her back to me. She was trembling, not from cold, but from the aftershock of her entire world collapsing in the span of 20 minutes. She turned around slowly. Her mascara was running down her cheeks in black rivulets. She looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw anger in her eyes, directed squarely at me. Why, she whispered. Why did you do this, Daddy? You watched us struggle. You watched me cry over bills. You watched us eat ramen noodles while you had $15 million sitting in a bank account. How could you be so cruel? I walked over to the leather chair where Travis had been sitting moments before. I sat down heavily, feeling the weight of my 68 years. I wasn't cruel, Lily, I said, my voice flat. I was careful. Careful, she screamed, her voice cracking. You lied to me. You let me believe we were poor. You let me believe Travis was our only hope. Travis was never a hope, I snapped. He was a parasite. And you let him attach himself to you because you were looking for a shortcut. I stood up and walked toward her. She flinched, but I didn't stop until I was standing right in front of her, looking down into her tear-stained face. You chose him, Lily. You brought him into our home. I watched you ignore the red flags. I watched you ignore the way he talked down to people. I watched you ignore the way he spent money he didn't have. You fell in love with a suit. You fell in love with a leased car and a fake smile. You wanted the fairy tale so badly you didn't check to see if the castle was made of cardboard. I loved him, she sobbed. You loved the idea of him, I corrected. If I had told you about the money 5 years ago, do you think Travis would have loved you? Or do you think he would have loved the bank account? He would have drained us dry, Lily. He would have spent every cent of that inheritance and left you with nothing but a broken heart and a bankruptcy filing. My silence was the only thing that protected you from him. She looked down at her hands, twisting her engagement ring, a ring I now knew was probably bought with a stolen credit card. So what happens now? She asked, her voice small and defeated. Do I get the money? Do we go shopping? Is that how this works? I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. No, Lily. That is not how this works. You don't get a reward for almost helping your husband commit elder abuse. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. It wasn't for a bank. It was for a divorce attorney. A shark even meaner than Blackwood. You have a choice to make right now, I said, holding out the card. You are legally married to a man who just committed fraud, forgery, and attempted assault. His debts are your debts. His enemies are your enemies. If you stay married to him, you go down with the ship. Won't. You spend the next 10 years paying off his mistakes. I paused, letting the reality sink in. Or you take this card. You file for divorce today. You cut him loose. And then what? She asked, reaching for the card with a shaking hand. Then I move into the mansion. I shook my head. No. Then you start over. I will pay for the divorce. I will clear your personal debts. But you are not getting access to the trust. Not a penny. You are going to get a job. You are going to rent a small apartment. You are going to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet without a man holding you up and without your father's checkbook acting as a crutch. She stared at me, shock replacing the anger. You are cutting me off. I am giving you a chance, I said. A chance to build a life that is actually yours. A life no one can take away from you because you earned it. I pressed the card into her hand. Travis offered you a fantasy paid for with lies. I am offering you reality paid for with hard work. It is not as pretty, Lily, but it is the only thing that lasts. Now decide. Are you his wife or are you my daughter? Lily looked at the card. She looked at the door where Travis had disappeared. She looked at the empty space on her finger where she had twisted the ring. Slowly, painfully, she slid the ring off her finger. She placed it on the mahogany table. It made a small, hollow sound. She looked up at me and nodded. I am your daughter, she whispered. Good, I said. Then let's go to work. We have a lot of mess to clean up. Lily stood there, rubbing the pale band of skin on her finger where her wedding ring used to be. She looked at me with eyes that were still wet, but starting to calculate. I could see the thought process forming behind her tears. She thought the hard part was over. She thought that by discarding Travis, she had bought a ticket back to the easy life. She thought she had traded a loser husband for a millionaire father and that her inheritance was about to kick in early. She was wrong. So what do we do now, Daddy? She asked, wiping her face. Do we go house hunting? Do I move into a hotel until we figure out the trust fund details? I reached into my pocket again. But I did not pull out a checkbook. I did not pull out a credit card. I pulled out a single silver key with a yellow plastic tag. I slid it across the polished mahogany table. It stopped right next to the divorce lawyer's card. You are going to move, she said, picking up the key. Is this for the new house? It is for an apartment on Elm Street, I said. It is a studio. 4th floor walk-up. No doorman, no elevator. It is safe, clean, and small. She stared at the key, her brow furrowing. A studio. But Daddy, you have $15 million. Why would I live in a studio? Because I paid the rent for 6 months, I said, my voice unyielding. That is my gift to you. You have a roof over your head for half a year. You have time to figure out who Lily is when she isn't defined by a man or a bank account. But how will I eat? She asked, her voice rising in panic. How will I pay for my car? How will I buy baby clothes? I pointed out the window toward the city below. There is a diner 3 blocks from that apartment, I said. It is called the Blue Spoon. The owner is an old friend of mine. I called him this morning. He is looking for a waitress. The morning shift starts at 6 a.m. It pays minimum wage plus tips. A waitress, she gasped, recoiling as if I had slapped her. I have a teaching degree. I am educated. You want me to pour coffee for truck drivers. I want you to learn the value of $1, I snapped. I want you to come home with aching feet and a pocket full of crumpled ones and fives that you earned by being polite to people who are rude to you. I want you to understand what it feels like to sweat for your survival. That is the only way you will ever respect money, Lily. And it is the only way you will ever respect yourself. She looked at the key, then at me. She wanted to throw it. I could see the tantrum building in her eyes. But then she remembered Travis screaming in the elevator. She remembered the $2 million of debt she had just escaped. She realized she had no safety net left. I am not punishing you, Lily, I said, softening my tone just a fraction. I am preparing you. If you can survive 6 months on your own, if you can work that job and pay your bills and save a little bit for that baby, then we will talk about the trust. But until then, you are on your own. She closed her hand around the key. Her knuckles turned white. She didn't say thank you. She didn't smile. She just nodded a sharp, jerky motion. Fine, she whispered. I will take the job. Good, I said, standing up and buttoning my $5,000 jacket. Because your shift starts tomorrow. Don't be late. 6 months have passed since I walked out of that boardroom, leaving my son-in-law broken on the floor. Travis is currently serving a 5-year sentence at the state penitentiary. It turns out the district attorney was very interested in the recording of him admitting to bribing a doctor and forging medical documents. I handed the evidence over personally. He traded his Italian suit for an orange jumpsuit and his arrogance for a prison ID number. He sends me letters sometimes begging for money for the commissary. I send him photocopies of the $1 bill he left on the table. I stopped by the Blue Spoon this morning. I sat in the back booth and watched my daughter. She is 7 months pregnant now, moving a little slower on her feet, but she does not complain. She was carrying a tray of heavy plates, wiping down tables, smiling at rude customers who didn't tip. She looked tired. Her hair was messy. Her nails were short and unpolished. But she looked stronger than I had ever seen her. She saw me and waved. She didn't ask for a loan. She didn't ask when she could move into the mansion. She just poured my coffee and told me she had saved enough for a crib. She's finally building a life that belongs to her. I drove my old truck up the winding road to the cemetery in the afternoon. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the granite stones. I walked to Catherine's grave, the grass freshly cut around the marker. I knelt down and placed a thick envelope on the cold stone. Inside was a finalized, irrevocable trust fund for my grandchild. It is locked tight. Education, health, housing. But not a single penny can be touched by Travis or anyone else until the kid is 25. I am breaking the cycle. I am making sure the next generation starts with a safety net, not a hammock. People always say money changes you. They are wrong. Money is just a magnifying glass. It shows you exactly who people really are. It showed me that my son-in-law was a criminal. It showed me that my daughter needed to hit rock bottom to find her footing. And it showed me that the richest man is not the one with the biggest bank account, but the one who can sleep at night, knowing his conscience is clean. I am Bernie Kowalski. I have $15 million in the bank, and I still drive a 1995 Ford, because I know the difference between price and value. And if you ever find yourself sitting on a gold mine, do yourself a favor. Keep your mouth shut and watch who brings a shovel. Did you like my story? Let me know in the comments if you would have given your daughter the money, or if you think I did the right thing. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories about justice and revenge. Thank you for watching. We often mistake financial support for love, thinking that giving our children an easy life is the ultimate gift. But I learned that the greatest inheritance isn't a trust fund. It's the resilience to survive without one. Money is a brutal truth serum. It strips away the masks people wear, revealing who is there for your soul and who is there for your wallet. If I had bailed Lily out, I would have crippled her future. Instead, by letting her hit rock bottom, I gave her the only thing Travis could never steal: her own dignity. True wealth isn't what you have in the bank. It's knowing you can lose it all and still be standing. Do you think I was too harsh on my daughter, or did she need this tough love to survive? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of justice served cold.